Tony Smith, former head of the UK Border Force, is coming on with us. He was on Jeremy Kyle last night with Henry Bolton, and they both offered their services, basically, to the Home Office, to Rishi Sunak, to put together a plan to stop the illegal boat people from landing on our shores, because this week alone there's been several incidents where people have had to record incidents with the police because of migrants who have come into their homes and asked to use phones and been threatening and basically putting people's safety in danger. This is a problem that has to be stopped. We've been saying it for months and months and months, probably years, for heaven's sake. Let's talk to Tony and find out what is going on. Tony, very good morning to you.
Morning, mate.
Thanks very much indeed. I saw you last night. I wanted to get you guys back on and just reiterate what you'd said, because obviously, you know, it has now reached the point where people are being concerned about the numbers coming, not just the numbers, but what happens to people when they get here. The fact that many of them are just wandering around really without any supervision whatsoever.
Yeah, it's a real problem, Mike. The Jetfoil and Manston are now completely overrun. Manston was supposed to be the answer for the onshore reception, with 1,000 spaces available for migrants to be processed, screened by the Border Force and Immigration Enforcement, biometrics taken, proper checks, and then moved on. But unfortunately, that hasn't proved to be enough. We're hearing reports of upwards of 3,000 or 4,000 now at Manston. We don't have enough Border Force or Immigration Enforcement officers to properly patrol that area. Kent Police are constantly being called in. I'm worried for my former colleagues, for their health and safety. People are being bitten. There are fights breaking out between the migrants who are getting frustrated because they aren't being moved through the system as quickly as they'd hoped for. So not only do we have a very big problem on the maritime, Mike, which we've spoken before about, but also in terms of what to do with the migrants when they finally get ashore, and how we're actually screening them and moving them on.
I mean, one of the things that perhaps might be a good result of that is that if they can pass the word back to their mates in Calais and say, you know, that story that they told you about coming to Britain and getting put up in a hotel, it's not happening because we're not getting moved to hotels and we're still stuck in this detention centre, which is smelly and overrun and horrible. Maybe they won't come in as many numbers, but I guess that's just wishful thinking on my part.
Well, I think we do need to talk about how we can discourage people from taking these journeys, Mike. We've spoken about this before. The whole point about Rwanda was, although it's been much criticised by a great many people, it was the only place where we could say we could legitimately, if you like, the courts would let us take people to where they could claim asylum, because we can't send them back to France. And many of them, as you know, won't take them back even if they refuse asylum. So the message going to the migrants is that all you need to do is get within British territorial waters and you're home dry, excuse the pun. You will be allowed to stay, but the difficulty is now is, well, where are they going to go? The hotels are filling up. The local authorities aren't clambering over themselves to take migrants into the communities, and there's a real worry that we're just going to simply be releasing a large number of people into the communities without anywhere to go, and largely not properly screened. And I think that's a real worry for border security in this country.
It really is. I mean, a lot of people have said to me, Rishi Sunak hasn't said much about immigration, hasn't said much about borders. Let's just have a look at what he did say yesterday.
I will deliver on its promise. A stronger NHS, better schools, safer streets, control of our borders.
Now, he says control of our borders, Tony, and we've heard it all before, haven't we? I mean, I said this morning, what we need now from the Prime Minister that's in power is proper action. Suella Braverman is back in the Home Office. We need to see something being done straight away, don't we?
Yeah, I had a look at his 10-point plan. Mike, I don't know if you did look through what he said. There's nothing really very new there. There are a few novel ideas, like having a more effective task force, which might be multi-agency rather than just us. I think that would be helpful. There's something about Rwanda, getting that going again. But for me, this is about returns and how are we going to start removing people again, Mike? Because if you don't ever send anybody back, you can't claim to have control of your borders. So they do need to talk to the French, like it or like it not. And we do need to accommodation with them. And I've said before, at operational level, in my time anyway, and I'm sure it's still the case, we had a very good working relationship with the PAF. They don't like smugglers, they don't like criminals, and they certainly don't like large numbers of irregular migrants around the Pas de Calais. And so they want to stop the boats as much as we do. But this is a political impasse in terms of not having a returns agreement. And I think Macron's position is this is a UK-EU agreement that needs to be struck. And when you get to Brussels, there are going to be strings attached. And I think there will be strings from Brussels about all kinds of things like the Northern Ireland Protocol and other related issues. So we're ending up negotiating over something that should be a no-brainer,
yes.
Mike. We should be agreeing to stop smuggling across two civilized countries, people drowning, fueling migration and illegal migration and crime should be a joint purpose that we should agree with the EU, and we need an action plan urgently. So it's not just the Home Office. I think our full wealth of diplomatic department, the Foreign Office need to get out there and talk to other countries, not just the EU, but source and transit countries about getting people sent back. Because when you guys are down at the airport with your cameras and they start to see people being loaded onto planes and removed from this country because they haven't been allowed in, that is the biggest deterrent of all.
Yeah.
But as you know, Mike, we haven't been able to remove anybody from the country for some time now, particularly the people coming on the small boats. These are largely because we've reached an international impasse that they need to overcome. So I'm afraid, although, Rishi Sunak and Suella Braverman have got very bold ideas, I think they're going to need to get involved much more heavily in the international community, because borders are two-way streets and we need to find a way of working with international partners to stop these boats.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I mean, we're not the only victims here, because you've got Italy, which has a massive problem with people. Greece has got a problem as well. Spain. I mean, any Mediterranean country that has, a border with the sea, if you like, is likely to have loads and loads of migrants. It's actually even more dangerous because they come on bigger boats in bigger numbers from North Africa into those islands on the south of Greece and in the south of Italy.
Yeah, there's something like an 85% increase across the Med. Mike's latest figures from Frontex, so those numbers are going up. I'm sure some of those people will be heading for the UK, heading for Calais, because, of course, as you know, the European Schengen zone is borderless. So once they're into the EU, and if they're not detained, then they can make their way up to Calais. So that is a problem. The Americans are telling me they're estimating 2 million this year, Mike, on the southern border. That is an all-time record. We all know the history of the US southern border with Mexico. There's been movies made about that, but they're talking about 2 million now. So
it's shocking.
Massive movement of people going on, Mike. And the international community needs to find a way of stopping it.
Absolutely right. And just for good measure, apparently there's a Christmas border force strike looming. Apparently 3,500 border force, immigration enforcement and visa officers from the ISU union threatening industrial action, which presumably would not only lead to lengthy queues at the airports over Christmas, but also screw up whatever it is they're trying to do on the south coast.
Well, I was there, Mike, when the ISU was formed, and the ISU was formed specifically because the Public and Commercial Services Union were calling us out on strike, and we felt a very serious sense of public duty that we would not, under any circumstances, walk away from the border. And despite all the problems, I still think that should be the case with the ISU. There are other measures they can take. I know they're not happy about a number of things, as many public servants are, so there are things they could do like work to rule, but I urge my former colleagues, please do not go on strike. Do not walk away from the border. Your role is to protect the public. I know it's really hard out there now with all of the problems that we've got, but I hope they don't take up this offer, and I hope the ISU and the Home Secretary can come to a sensible accommodation that doesn't happen, Mike, and that they don't go on strike.
Absolutely right. Tony, I would endorse that wholeheartedly. Thank you very much for talking to us. Tony Smith, former head of the UK Border Force there, on Rishi Sunak's pledge to sort out the borders, to create borders that actually work. Well, will he? And he needs to do it soon. Suella Braverman is charged with that as well. We'll take your calls, 0344 499 1000.